We say oftentimes children are the future, but where is our future if we aren't all spending time with our children? I want to challenge you. I want to encourage you. Spend more time mentoring, being a parent, being a teacher, being a youth organizer. Spend time building up our future because it'll make it a brighter future.
Hi, everyone. Dr. James here, and welcome to another edition of the Dr. James Show. And as usual, I'm super excited to bring our guest out. And that guest, oh man, I've known him for a number of years and I've watched him grow. His name is Kirk Berry. Kirk is a youth empowerment educator and mentor, and he is the founder of the KB Foundation. And like I've said, I've seen this man grow, and he's doing phenomenal things. But before we bring him out, before he comes to share his magic, let's take a look at this clip of Kirk Berry in action. Take a look.
I created it. Why? Because I realized that so many adults would tell me that today's young people aren't motivated. Today's young people aren't inspired. The millennials that are graduating don't want to work hard. But it's not the young people, it's the adults. So I travel as a professional, educating other professionals how we actually do this. And so the title of this keynote is, I want us all to strive to empower youth. I want us to work hard and strive at it. We know the statistics of what we learned in each of the presentations over the last day and a half. My presentation is, now that we know that information, how do we strive to empower youth? A lot of times our youth don't feel that they're in control. Like even at a young age, I'm 9 and I'm overweight. I was born this way and I'm going to be born that way. It's not about just the overweight piece. I want them to be in control of their health, not just how they physically look.
Watching that, I want to be young again. I want to be young again because I want Kirk Berry to mentor me. Welcome to the Dr. James Show, Kirk Berry. What's up, man?
How you doing? How you doing, Dr. James Smith? I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
It is an honor, a privilege to have you chop it up with me and share your thoughts, your story, what you're doing with the youth. And I really appreciate it. And watching that clip, I wish I had a Kirk Berry in my life when I was 9, 10, 11 years old. Now, it turned out okay, I believe, but having someone like you, tell us, to get started, what motivated you to take this path, to go on this journey, to be the superhero for youth?
I like the way you put that, superhero for youth. My story is probably like many others in the past and still to this day. You and I have a mutual friend, Marcus Allen, who is CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I shared this story with him as well. My younger brother and I are still on the waiting list to get a match mentor. Now, obviously, we're not. I'm an adult, so I'm not on the waiting list, but there are parents who have children waiting for their child to get matched up. And sometimes, depending on your age, that actually never happens. And so when you talk about the quest of the superhero, the quest that I'm on as a superhero, it's simply that I want to help kids get off a waiting list, or I want to help adults who are working with young people to be able to better empower them when they are mentoring, or when they are teachers, or when they are social workers trying to change or create change in a young person's life. I want to help be a support system to those professionals who are working with our young people, because I can't be the superhero to all
Sure.
young people.
Sure. I know things have changed now. You're an adult, you're professional, you're an author, speaker. But when you were younger, what did it feel like to be on that list?
So it's funny because when you're on a list, you don't know unless your parents tell you. But I was on the list of growing up in a home with just my mom and my grandma. So I was on a list of looking for male mentors or not having those male mentors until I got into the world of sports. So how was that feeling? It was a feeling that you didn't know what you had until you got it. When you finally got a coach that cared about you, a coach that wanted to tell you why school was important, a coach that wanted to hold you accountable for doing the right or wrong, that was something like, wow, I need this structure. I need this discipline. And it's different when it just comes from those who love you in the household.
I love it. I ask you a question that I ask all the guests because people want to know. They read your credentials, they see your information on social media because you're definitely out there. But when people come up to you and they say, Mr. Berry, what problem or problems do you solve? Well, think about what you do. Think about who you serve. What problem or problems do you solve for youth?
The first problem that I solve are adults who can't connect with youth. So youth feel like there's no one who hears me, not listens, but hears me. So I help solve the problem of connection. And it's so interesting because a lot of us feel that we connect well, but ask the young person if they feel their teacher connects well. Ask the young person if they feel their parent connects with them well, especially with our youth going through so many things. So the first thing I solve the problem is the ability to help our adults connect with the young people.
I love that one. Why do you feel today's adults have a problem with connecting to our youth? Because things have changed incredibly. So why do adults, teachers, educators, parents, why are we having problems with connecting with our youth?
I believe there's a problem because everyone wants to relate things to their time. So one of my favorite movies, Dirty Dancing. And
Patrick Swayze.
Yep. What was the problem with the young people in that movie? That their dancing was too provocative. But to who?
Right.
It was the adults who weren't willing to change or see things grow or evolve. So the answer to your question is, it's generations wanting things to still be the same the way they were. And they're just not that way anymore. And hopefully I can continue to lead the charge, as I have a 10-year-old daughter who's telling me, Dad, things aren't the way they were when you were a kid. And I got a 19-month-old son who's going to grow up differently than my daughter. So it's just adults. What do we say? We should always be learning and growing. But when it comes to young people, we really do think we know it all. And that's the biggest disconnect.
Let's go back to Dirty Dancing. There's a song, I had the time of my life.
That's right.
Tell me about the time you're having right now in doing the work that you do. What's that like for you? Does it fill you up? Does it stress you out? Does it invigorate you? Tell me about what life is like for you doing what you do.
For me, life is extremely exciting. And it's exciting because I know I'm living my purpose. And purpose is used a lot, but I believe that the way I define it is totally different than others. And it might not be, maybe you've heard this before, but when I say living my purpose, I'm being used. Which means when I train, when I'm speaking, when I share a message, there isn't a check big enough that can fill me back up from what I give. And we always share, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, and what would you do for free? And I would speak or train for free, but people compensate me for my ability to make change in the way they work with youth. But I feel drained when I'm giving adults, and specifically, adults have different problems or struggles. A grandma raising her grandchild doesn't need a professional development training for me. She wants her grandson or granddaughter to understand I love them and that's why I discipline them. Well, I need to help that grandma understand how she can work with her grandchild who there's a huge disconnect. That's my purpose. Like, it's really my purpose. And I feel drained when I'm doing it. And there's nothing that can replace it because I'm really trying to do what I call the heart work. I'm not trying to do any gimmicks because we're dealing with our young people.
I'm getting goosebumps. That's good stuff. You talked about, because we're dealing with our youth. I don't know if I'm cut out to do that today. I am a giver like you. I'm a coach. I'm an educator. But I grew up during a time when there wasn't a participation trophy. You either won or lost. Coaches yelled at you to play harder. You were pushed. You were even punched at times. It was tough love. Describe today's youth, because I see in this digital time frame we live in, I just see people holding up phones and playing Madden and games and so much technology. Describe today's youth and give us some of your secret sauce for getting them to listen to you and want to be and follow Kirk Berry.
The secret sauce. So one thing that usually shocks people is that our children still want tough love. Our children still need tough love. And I'll give you an example, and I share this often. When kids don't feel loved at home and they have choices of what to choose in life, oftentimes, not 100%, but oftentimes, Dr. James, they choose the worst two things that will still love them, but will steer them down a bad path. And that is the streets of crime and drugs or the streets of prostitution. Your pimp will tell you he loves you, but he's going to give you structure, discipline, and tough love. And as a young girl or a young boy who goes to the streets with the dope boys and gun violence, they tell you they love you, but they give you a whole lot of tough love. They make you do things you don't want to do, but their door is always open and they always make time for you. Why? Because they need you to carry out the negativity that they don't want to do. So when you ask that question, how do we get kids to listen to us? Have the same open door. Why can a young man go to sell drugs faster than he can learn to get a haircut? The barber's like, well, if I tell him to be here at 8, he won't show up. The problem is not that he won't show up at 8, but the drug dealer, he shows up at the young man's house when he's not on the block when he's supposed to be there. And the barber was like, well, he didn't come through my door, so I just kept my business going. You see the difference?
Yeah.
The negative things in life that want our kids will go get our kids when our kids don't show up. The positive things, like if kids don't show up to school, you got to miss a certain number of days before we send a truancy officer out to you, when we really need the principal that you used to have that showed up at your parents' doorstep and said, where's your kid at?
Yeah.
Kids still want tough love. I think we've changed.
That's deep. That's deep. I remember growing up. Now, granted, I'm just a tad older than you.
Just a bit.
There were a lot of team sports, whether it was football, basketball, baseball. We played out in the street. We rode our bikes. Every summer, I couldn't wait to put that uniform on for the Jayhawks or play for YGS football. There was so many team elements. I don't see that as much anymore. I drive around West Philly. I don't see kids playing summer league baseball in West Philly like they used to. I do know there's a lot of basketball, AAU and all stuff. I don't see the same team elements. Am I missing it? Has team changed? And what has, if they have changed, what has taken the place of those team-centric experiences?
I think there's a lot that someone would say to answer this. I think one of the hardest things is the focus on young kids being really good has made it for those kids that would normally play just because it was the thing to do. AAU sports at an early age, my personal opinion, is taking away what you talked about. So when we see the World Series of baseball and it's 10-year-old kids in there that can really pitch, guess what you're not going to do if you're a 10-year-old that can't pitch or catch? You're not going to go play baseball. So it's the finance-driven focus on kids trying to be the best that they can that's weeded out kids who would just show up to learn a team sport. That's my opinion. I have nothing against AAU, but to your point, when there used to be baseball leagues and different leagues everywhere, it was because anybody in the community could play.
Yes.
Once again, who's driving AAU? The adults. I believe the adults have changed, and that's why I do a lot of my work. I love speaking to youth. But when I leave, if the adults talk to them in the same negative way, derogatory way, then my message quickly falls on deaf ears. So I had to pivot and go, I'll talk to the youth, but let me do professional development with the adults.
I love it. And since we're talking adults, a question from the audience says, what are some key ways, what are some keys for an adult to effectively mentor a youth? So imagine the youth left the auditorium, and now you're talking to adults, and you have their ear, you have their head and their heart. What are some keys for an adult to effectively mentor a youth?
The first one, I'm a big stickler for because it is in my book, is begin with dialogue and stop having a monologue. And if I have the adult's ear, they need to understand, if you think you're having a dialogue, most children will tell you, most youth will tell you, no. When I answered your question, you started telling me what I should do after that, and it became a monologue. If you want to mentor youth the right way, make sure you're sharing the floor more, allowing them to share the floor more and talk more than you do. You will learn so much. You will glean on what you should do the next time you meet with them. You will know what book you should bring back. And what happens is our young people are extremely smart. Dr. James, if you ask a young person a question, if they give you one or two words, they're testing you to see if you're going to be the average adult who will fill in the rest of the conversation, which now has become a monologue. Kids have done it so much at an early age. From very young, we say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they tell us, and if we like it, we go, oh, that's so cute. You're going to do wonderful. And we keep going and going and going. But if you really wanted to hear from them, there should have been a follow-up question to what they wanted to be when they grow up. How do they plan to do it? Do they know anyone who's doing it? Would they like to get connected? If you want to truly mentor well, ask as many questions as you can so that you can learn from that young person.
When you were talking, you reminded me of a time when my daughter was in high school, a senior, and I was invited to come speak to the top 150 seniors in South Jersey. And as a speaker, first thing we do is do our needs assessment. And I talked to my daughter about, what can I do to be effective? The first thing she said was, don't embarrass me. Second, she said, don't tell us how things used to be in the old days. And for her, the old days were the 90s, the 80s. For me, the old days were the 60s and 70s. But the last thing she said was, Daddy, tell us what to do as youth. Don't tell us what not to do, because adults always say, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. And I went out and spoke, and I adhered to her direction. What are your thoughts about adults and telling children, number one, what not to do, and number two, what I call taking away their power? Because when we're young, we believe we can fly, climb, jump, we do wheelies on our bikes, we ride no-handed, and then the adults get in line. Listen to me, stand up straight, just very, what I call limiting feedback and conforming feedback. So what are your thoughts about how children are raised today and some of the things, the admonition my daughter gave me for that presentation?
Well, I think your daughter gave you great ammunition, especially with the last one, because, and this is what we want as adults. We want permission from kids to do what they need. And she gave you that. She said, Dad, don't tell us what not to do. We hear that often. Tell us what to do, right? So I think that was great because you want permission. So if we're mentoring, if we're teachers, if we're coaches, we should be asking for permission to be able to help with that next step. Because if we don't have that permission, the young person won't be ready to receive it. When we talk about parenting, I have no right to tell any parent what to do. But I will say this, asking our kids how they plan to do something goes so far. So my daughter is like, when I get a car, I'm going to do this. There's no need for me to say, no, you're not. Whatever it is she's going to do. She wants to go shopping. She wants to take her little brother somewhere, take him shopping. How? How much does a car cost?
Wow.
Right? Because we can get into a conversation when we start asking, how do you plan to do that, as opposed to yes, you can, or no, you can't. To your point, the willies and with no hands and all the things kids love to do, when they get into a space of talking about things they want to do and they're not actually doing it, let's ask the how question. And then back to your daughter, if they don't know how, can I have permission to show you how, tell you how? Can I have permission to introduce you to someone? And so some people may be thinking, ask my kids permission. Well, really, if we don't like the word permission, ask for buy-in. Right? Oh, we like that word,
She's
right?
dropping pearls. She's dropping pearls, man.
If you don't want to ask your kid for permission, get buy-in from them so they're like, yes, I want to learn about a savings account so that I can have my own car when I turn 17. That's getting buy-in. If you don't want to ask permission, can I take you to the bank to open up your account? Give buy-in that they can have ownership of when they decide to get a car. Either way, how you skin the cat, you want their involvement instead of telling them they can or they can't.
I love it. I love it. I know you talk about the significance of building their confidence. We're going to watch a clip, movie clip, video clip of you sharing that methodology and the significance of building their confidence. Let's take a look.
How important it is to build their confidence? A lot of our young people, would you agree, are not confident. So if we know it's important to build their confidence, but if you ask how many are confident, and 5 out of 10 to just pick a number, say that they're not confident, then that means we need to overbuild, right? Like we need to emphasize and support them even more. But building their confidence, when we talk about empowering them, we can start by what they do well, like what they do really well, and using that to branch out. How can you do that somewhere else? This doesn't say show them how to excel in areas that they excel. It says show them how to excel in areas that are important to them. So that means when little boys say that they want to be NBA players, but they're horrible at basketball, it doesn't mean tell them to go get a plan B. It's not. It says show them how to excel in areas of life that are important to them. If it's important to me today, Legos, then teach me how to build Legos. If it's not important to me next year and I want to learn skateboarding, teach me how to skateboard. If we want to empower youth, we need to show them how to excel in the areas that are important to them. And that's what we need to teach our young people. That if anyone's ever told them that they can't do something, your response should be this: it just meant you couldn't do it with them. But I'll help you. I'll show you the way. I'll connect the dots for you.
Ooh, ooh, boom, 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 boom. What? Unpack that some more. Tell us about significance of building confidence, and what do you do, or what do you tell adults to do? That was a hot clip, man.
No, thank you for sharing it. When we're talking about teaching adults how to empower youth, we first have to make sure that, number one, people understand what empower means. And it means to make someone stronger. It means to build up someone's confidence. So in there, that highlight, which you just showed, I was trying to explain that when working with youth and as youth workers, depending on what age group you work with them, it could be foster care, it could be out of school youth, they enter your area, even as a teacher or mentor, with interest. And if you want to build their confidence, start with their interests, even if they don't do it well. Even if they don't do it well. So when a kid says they love to sing and they want to be on a choir, a great choir director says, baby, come on in. I'm going to show you how to sing. The goal is not to go, well, let's find your strengths and point you there. Kids immediately feel deflated when you don't sew into what I said. And that's why I give the example, because a lot of adults like to say, our young boys either want to be rappers or sports players. Well, that's what they see. And if that's what they see, let's support it. And to your point about a participation trophy, they'll quickly learn I get the little one, and someone else gets the big one. I need to find something else. But they wanted to be involved in it, support that. And so, as I said in the talk, right? If I like Legos today, buy me all the Lego sets. And if I want to go to skateboarding, buy me a skateboard. This builds the confidence of the child, because it's like that saying adults say, anything you want to do, put your mind to it. The adult is now supporting that. And that's how you build their confidence, supporting what their interests are.
Support. I'm going to show you a picture of you from a long time ago. I want you to tell me, how did you get there and the type of confidence you had during this time? Let's take a look. I think you remember. Let's check out this picture. Look like you putting it on this person, bringing them down, number 53 in your scoreboard and number 1 in your heart. Tell us about time at the University of Buffalo, you playing football, what led you there, and the man you were then.
So it's very interesting that you show this, because who I am in this picture is not who many would believe. So when you play college sports, they tell you school first, football second. School first, football second. And if you follow my hands, they're really telling you football first and school second.
Yes.
The person you see in this photo struggled with that, because my mother was very clear, and Dr. James, you know her, school will always be first.
Yes.
And it wasn't because I was a straight A student. I struggled to get into college. I struggled to get into the University of Buffalo. I had to take my SATs 3 times. My mom always reminds me, your story is more about your struggles with academics than it is being a Division I football player, because you didn't want to play football. I used my athletic tool to pay for school. I used my athletic tool to pay for school. So when I posted that picture, some people said, I didn't even know you played football, right? Like, I don't have that build, that physique anymore. I look much better in suits than I do a uniform banging my head over and over again. So who you see in that picture is someone who I didn't necessarily fit in. Now, I was captain my senior year. I started, but I didn't fit in, because when I was a freshman and they were like, who's here to play football? I didn't put my hand up. They were like, who's here to go to class? I put my hand up. So I had already stuck out. To them, that wasn't leadership. But to our conversation and how we want kids to be individuals and not follow the crowd, I knew right there I was a leader, because I'm still going to ball. There's no question about that. But that's not first. That's second. So the person you see in that picture is someone who was victorious by being able to go to school, graduate in 4 years, but also able to ball out on the field and be one of his captains his senior year. But I was able to put school first and football second. And I was a leader because of that.
I love it. When I was in college, I used to tell people I am a student athlete. I'm a student who plays football. It's funny, Kirk. I used to wear a blazer and jeans that were pressed really tight, and I wore glasses that had no prescription.
Oh, that's a style now. So you started it. That's
I love it. You mentioned several times so far your mother.
Yes.
Monique Berry. We have a picture of you and your mother. I want you to look at that picture and tell me the impact she's had on your life. Let's take a look at the picture, just you and your mom. Talk to me about the impact that she had and still has on your life, because she's the person that introduced us.
Yes, she is. So my mother raised me on her own with my grandmother. And when people say, can a woman raise a man? The answer is yes, and I'm proof of it. That's the impact. She taught me how to be a young man who can work hard for what I want, who can be an individual and not a follower. She introduced me one time and one time only, and it changed my life. I have an older brother and a younger brother. She said, "This is my $1 million child." And that's all I needed from there, right? It gave me more confidence than you could ever imagine. But my mother has been there when I failed and told me that, I made a bad choice or I made a bad decision, but I'm not a failure. And she's been there for all of my success. My mother sits on the road of my oughtness and my awesomeness. And I learned that from my pastor. She sits right there. If I do something amazing, she's not overly excited. But if I completely fall flat on my face, she's not disappointed. She lives right on the corner and supports me tremendously. And the only thing I like to tell people is, while a woman can raise a man, it takes other lions and wolves to teach that man how to run with the pack. So the other thing my mother has done for me, as you introduced her, you said she introduced us. My mother showed me other men who could help me run with the pack. And that's what it takes. Men and fathers, I'm a father, we do a lot for our children. But a woman can raise a man, but how to run with other lions, other herds of elephants, how to lead the pack. My mother did an excellent job of making sure I met men who could show me how to run at a pace that's my own pace, but with integrity and dignity, because I'm pretty sure she understood that was something she couldn't show me.
I love it. I love it. And one thing you tell children and adults, and we're going to see in this clip, tell them to do things differently. Not, what's the quote? You were born an original, don't be a copy. Let's take a look at you driving that point home.
The purpose of this closing keynote is to, you guys know all the data. What do we do differently? And if you as individuals are already doing it, how do we help the peers that we know aren't doing this? How do we help the peers that we work with and the parents make sure? And if you work with all peers that do well with young people, how do we make sure our community empowers? My name is Kirk Berry. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate and enjoy you guys. Thank you so much.
Ooh, that was sweet. That was sweet. That sounds like a standing O. That sounds like a standing O. What's the significance of doing things differently?
Such a loaded question, but it simply put,
I saw you take a deep breath, like, which way do I go? Because I can go in a lot of different ways. But so many of us want to follow, do what someone else. I hate when people say the next Michael Jordan. Be the first you.
That's the only choice you have, is to be the first you. My deep breath when you ask that question is because there's so much importance in doing things differently, but the biggest one is there can only be one of you. There is a reason you have Junior behind your name, because your father with the first, he was him. The reason why it's so important to talk about doing things differently is because our kids, our youth, young adult, when trying to do it someone else's way, you don't feel authentic. You don't even feel that it's possible. And I love movies. So as I talk about Dirty Dancing, my next movie reference is when you watch Ray Charles, and they tell him, Ray, you do great impressions, but we want to know what you sound like. What's your voice? What's your style? So when you talk about what's the importance of doing things differently, you'll be the best you can be when you do it your way. You can learn from other people, you can glean from other people, but then there still has to be your way. And the first video, when you first showed it, Like everywhere I go now, I'm very clear. I have to tell people what a youth empowerment educator is, because motivational speaker is already taken by the masses. And I had to really hone in on what do I do differently to motivate people. Well, there's a lot of adults who want to connect with youth, who want to motivate youth, but they need to be given permission to empower them. So I am your youth empowerment educator. That's my way. No one else has that title. I hope it becomes so well known that other people want to say they're a youth empowerment educator,
Sure.
like a DEI, right? Like that's the big thing now, right? So many people do it, but it wasn't a thing 6 years ago. Well, I want other people to go, wow, youth empowerment is needed. We need to teach teachers how to better connect with their kids, because you won't be able to help a student's math score raised if he or she feels you don't even like them.
Whew. Now, for all these nuggets that you're dropping in your book, we're going to put the book cover up there. I want people to see this cover, this phenomenal book. I'm going to have a hard time lifting it up because it's so full of information and pearls. Let's take a look at the cover, and I want you to talk about what inspired you to write the book and what are some of the nuggets that are inside. So let's take a look at the cover of the book.
5 powerful tips for motivating youth. It's not the best title when it comes to sales, but it was exactly what I wanted to name it. And so this is not a book that young people will read and magically become motivated. This is a book when someone says, hey, I'm going on an interview next week. Give me your 5 best tips of what I should do in that interview. When they come back from the interview, they should tell you how these tips worked when they were in the interview. Maybe their closing questions, maybe the questions that they had for the employer about the management style. They should tell you if those tips worked. So this book was designed for adults, and it's 5 powerful tips in there that will help them better motivate young people. So when anybody has the book, Dr. James, and they tell me that it was a good read, I'm honored, and I say thank you, but I didn't write it because I wanted you to just read it.
Sure.
I'd rather you tell me, Kirk, your tips didn't work. And I'm like, all right, let's go through it. Tip number 1 was begin with dialogue. Let me know how that dialogue went. And if they can't give it to me, then I know that they probably had a monologue, right? Yeah. So this book, for me, when I was done speaking, as you know, and other speakers watching this, people want more of you. When they see young people listen to me for 45 minutes and they're actually listening with their eyes and ears, teachers are like, I can't get so-and-so to ever do that in my class. What did you do? And so I said, I need to write a resource. I need to write a tool. And that's what 5 powerful tips for motivating youth. And I've received letters and emails. And one that always sticks out to me is a dad who said, I wouldn't let my son play football, but I read your book and I allowed him to play, and it brought us closer. Right? Remember, we empower our youth by allowing them to do what they're interested in. And he let his son didn't say, I want to go to the NFL. He's like, I want to play football. Yeah. Right? And his dad, because of safety reasons, was keeping him from it. But because of my book and the dialogue and the structure and discipline, wear your helmet right. Make sure your shoes are really on your feet properly so you don't twist the ankle. How many athletes do we see their shoe just comes off while they're running? It's because they're not really laced. If this dad puts some structure and discipline, which is tip 2, right? Begin with dialogue, and then what you learn, create structure and discipline around it so you can see them excel or even sometimes fail, but it creates some motivation to keep going.
I love it. Let's stay with motivation. And this question is for all of the educators out there. I'm going to share it because I'm an educator. And during this pandemic, a lot of the courses were done virtually.
Yes.
And professors say all the time, my students don't put their face on. They have their name. They don't come on the screen. Now, for me, I get it on. I get them to come on. I see my faces. I see the students. what advice would you give educators and people who aren't able to get people to turn their cameras on? What advice would you have for them to ensure that more people actually show up physically and we can see them?
I'm stealing this from someone who I had a chance to meet because it was brilliant. They just turned it into a game. They said, hey, tomorrow's class, let's see who can come up with the best photo, right? And it could be of anything, right? It could be a photo of Cookie Monster. And we want you to share why I'll pick some people, not the whole class. I'll pick like, hey, why'd you put Cookie Monster? And then that person says, I love cookies, my favorite, right? Like they, as opposed to it being a chore, it became something that was fun and engaging. And so then after that, now we all turn on our cameras.
Yeah.
Right? They made it part of the learning experience as opposed to it just being a chore. The other thing I'd recommend is if we're going to use these platforms, let's use them for what they are. You can't share as a student if your camera is not on. We want you, like when you're going to share something with your classmates, they need to be able to not just hear you, but they need to be able to see you. So now you start setting a precedence that, especially for your college professors, right? If I'm making participation a certain percentage of your grade,
yes,
and presentations are a part of participating, you already know you got to turn your camera on, right? So involving them in the presentation is going to go very far and be extremely valuable if you want them to participate with their camera on. If you're just going to talk to them for 50 minutes, I probably wouldn't turn my camera on either.
Absolutely.
Because it is a monologue and not a dialogue.
Good. That's good.
Let's have a dialogue, even when we're teaching, so that we can find out what our students think, why they think it. But I can't hear from you if I can't see you. I want to be able to respect that we can see each other and not just hear.
I love it. Love it. One of the first things I learned about you early on in our relationship was that you were a single dad. I have a picture of you and your daughter. Tell us about that journey. I know now married and you have a son, but take us through that journey of bringing your daughter to work, being the father, sharing the custody. And let's put the picture up there. I want people to see you and your daughter. Tell us what that was like.
So my daughter's 10 years old now, but I've had 50-50 split custody since she was 2. And when I met Dr. James Smith Jr., it would just be my princess and I all the time. She went to work with Daddy. She went to the social club where I'm a member at with me and would be at evening events. And she went to many speaking engagements. This right here is what I did not have. So I don't have one single picture with the father that helped birth me. Not one. I don't know what he looks like. I don't know his name. I don't know anything. And as an adult, I would never share this when I was younger. I would never share that I didn't have a connection. But when people ask the question that you asked, like, we always see you with your daughter, I am simply giving her a complete experience, a completely different experience than what I had. And it's possible for all of us. Just because you did not have something, it does not mean that you can't do it. It actually means you know everything you shouldn't do so you can become it. And even sometimes that's hard, because a lot of men and women who grow up without a parent, they reciprocate the same behaviors. And for me, I did not want to do that. So that's exactly why at an early age, I knew from the very beginning I wanted to have just as much rights as her mother did. Her mother is a wonderful person. And I just had to make sure I showed up to get and ask for everything that I wanted. And I have access to my daughter. And the relationship you see, it's amazing to me because we were together so much, Dr. James, I didn't realize the impact till she started asking questions of other kids. Like when we did play dates, she would ask other kids, "Where's your dad?" Because in her world, dads are always there. She would ask your child, where, because most play dates are moms and moms. But because I have my daughter so much, it'd be dad and a mom.
Right.
And she would ask some young ladies, "Where's your dad?" And then that child had the face that I would have when I was a kid. Like, that's a hurt piece. Like,
you indicated that you didn't have that picture with your dad.
Yeah.
We got a picture of you with your son.
Mhm.
He's not going to say that. He has that picture. Let's take a look at your little guy and tell me about him. Tell me about him. Let's put the picture up there. Tell me about him.
So, yep, this is Hudson. And all day we go, big boy goes rah. And that's what he goes, rah, right? And you're right. He won't ever say he doesn't have a picture with his dad. We take photos like this all the time, just randomly. This is who I am when I'm not on stage. I love wearing a nice pressed shirt. I love wearing a suit. But when I'm at home, it's a tank top, some ball shorts, and we just take photos. And I want the same way you could find these, I want my kids to be able to find them, see them somewhere. And so having my son is amazing. It's totally different. My daughter made me a better parent, having her first and him second, because he's a year and a half, so he cries all the time. So I just have to be okay with it. But yes, this is us right here every day, just hanging out.
I love it. And there's one more person I want to highlight and feature. And I believe you guys are nearly 2 years in, but I believe she's the love of your life. Let's take a picture, show a picture of you and your wife, and tell me about how that journey began.
Oh man, you're on a roll. Because I don't post my kids or my wife often. So you got like the 3 photos that you could find. So I believe social media is a wonderful thing. But I am very private when it comes to family, but also social media is social. So this is a night that my wife and I just celebrated something for me, and I wanted people to see. My post was, if I'm shining, if you see me thriving in life, if you think I'm someone amazing, it's because she holds me down. She takes care of the house. She makes sure that everything that I need to feel okay to go out in the world is taken care of at home. She holds me down. And so I put that in this post. And so, yes, definitely the love of my life. November, it'll be 3 years for us. We dated in college. We were together for 4 years. We broke up. And that's why I have a 10-year-old that's not by her, right? But we came back around. And I also believe because of my daughter, I'm a better husband. Right? Like having a child, and Chelsea and I were together if Chelsea's 10 and we're about to be married for 3, Chelsea and I were together for 6 years before Nicole and I came back in the picture and started talking about what life would look like. Right. And so my daughter helped me just understand like commitment and being there at all times. Right. Because when you have a child, I have to be there at all times. My mother helps me when I can't be there, right? She does pick up and drop off sometimes. But yes, being married to Nicole is a wonderful thing. And we made it through the pandemic. A lot of people didn't. Right? We got married in 2019. 6 months later, it said you locked in the house with whoever you married to, and you can't go anywhere. And we're working and made it through that. And it's been a wonderful thing. And every time somebody asks me how my marriage is, I don't know if they really appreciate my answer, but I tell them it's work every day. Yes, it's a lot of fun. Yes, there's a lot of hard conversations, but we're working through the fun. We're working through the hard conversations. And anything that you've shown a video of me speaking is because my home is taken care of. And we do that together, but she makes it possible so I can go out and try to be the superhero that you mentioned in the beginning.
You are. You mentioned going out to speak. If the folks watching this want you to come speak to their youth, to adults who take care of youth, how can they reach you?
The best way is straight on my website, which is simply my name, kirkberry.com. that is one of the best ways to reach out to me. My team and I are very responsive, and that's kirkberry.com. For those who are mature enough to know Star Trek, like Captain Kirk.
Captain Kirk.
That's right. Kirk. So, yep, that's the best way, kirkberry.com.
I know I asked you earlier, how did this journey start? And you shared your thoughts. For folks who are joining us late, rather than you repeating how this started, let's see a video of how this KB Foundation and how you got started in this work. Let's take a look.
This is Kirk Berry. I go by KB Power. And let me just start off by telling Aaron, congratulations on starting New Regular Lifestyle clothing, apparel, and just promoting your work so that you can leave something for your children. I want to give a big shout out to Aaron and thank you for featuring KB Power, your youth empowerment coach. My brand is simply trying to empower people. This shirt right here says, I can, I will, I have to. And what that means is anything I put my mind to, anything you put your mind to, you can do it, you will do it, you have to do it. Aaron asked me to share a little bit about my entrepreneur journey, and I started my business over 11 years ago. I travel across the country as a youth empowerment educator, teaching adults how to empower our young people. One thing I realized is that I don't always want to wear suits and ties to speaking engagements. While I like them, while I try to look nice to the best of my ability, sometimes it doesn't connect with the young people. So I created my own clothing apparel just so I could wear empowering messages when I'm on the stage. So I have a shirt that says, you can, you will, you have to. And what that simply means is I'm trying to tell my audience something that speaks to them while they hear me speak. I am a professional speaker. I have 2 books, but I'm only on here right now to share with you about my clothing line because I want to send people impactful messages that help them change their lives. Oftentimes people ask me, how do I live this out? I can, I will, I have to. And the simple way I do that is by a basic principle. It's called 90 minutes for 90 days. Any area of life where you want to see positive results, where you want to achieve a goal or a dream that you have, I promise and guarantee, and we know there are none in life, that if you put at least 90 minutes a day in for 90 days, you will see positive results. Those of you who want to get on the entrepreneur journey, like Aaron and myself, you want to leave something to your children, people say all you got to do is put in the time. But that's a lot. Where do I put it in my 24 hours a day? Well, I'm encouraging you, start with 90 minutes. Anything you want to achieve, I can, I will, I have to. Living the dream of being a business owner. 90 minutes for 90 days.
I can, I will. What moved you to start your clothing line? And how do you come up with those memorable phrases and quotes and mantras?
The whole reason behind my clothing line is because coming off stage, pouring into people, giving them nuggets, helping them transform their lives. Sometimes people don't want to read 5 powerful tips for motivating youth. Sometimes people don't want to journal, but they love the fact that they can wear something that makes them dig deeper, reminds them why they do what they do, and it supports someone who they just watched get off stage. So for me, I don't want to get into like fashion clothes, right? But I have 4 sayings that I wear on shirts and people love them and it reminds them of what they're doing. One of them is, when do you get better? And on the back of it, it says 90 minutes for 90 days. Right?
Love it.
The other one says commitment, consistency, and courage equals competitive edge. Commitment, consistency, and courage equals competitive edge. So as I shared in that video, I don't always want to wear suits when I'm going to talk to young people, but I also didn't want to wear the latest labels. so I could wear something that was professional because it's mine, but it also shares something. So kids want to know, like, what does I can, will, have to mean, right? Like, it makes them prompt and ask questions. And when I go through the airport, it prompts questions in people, and they want to know, what does it mean and where to get it? So it just allowed me to extend my empowerment. All my messages on my shirt empower people. It gives them the ability to claim what's right and take what's theirs in life by just having a message that's right on my shirt.
You talk about extending your message, You do it so masterfully. You do it in the room, you do it in hotel ballrooms, but you also do it outside. Let's take a clip of you in your summer camp. What? Let's take a look.
The expression experience equals power. Well, it's true, especially for young people. And without exposure to new ideas and new environments and new ways of thinking, children often cannot fully grow or evolve into well-rounded adults. And that is where the power of mentoring comes in. That is the goal of the KB Foundation and its founder, Kirk Berry. He's joining us now to talk about a very special summer camp that gives children these transformative experiences that we're talking about. Kirk, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me, Lucy.
Absolutely. So talk about when you started this camp and why it's so important to get kids into these new environments.
2016, Lucy, and it was something that I felt was needed in the Philadelphia and Montgomery County communities where I often work and I'm from. And these kids need the opportunity because exposure is life. I had the opportunity to play college football, attend college, live in Europe, and everything that I am today is because of the exposure of different life lessons and life skills that I've learned throughout my experience. And I want to be able to give young men that opportunity to learn life skills that can help them grow and develop.
So the camp focuses on middle school age children, 11 to 13. Why did you focus on that group specifically?
That group specifically is still impressionable, Lucy. They still want to learn. They may think they know it all, but they're still young enough to also want to soak things up and be a sponge. And older kids also can be a sponge, but that group still listens well. They're coming fresh out of being 10 years old, so being that baby stage. And it's an opportunity to be able to get them on the right track before they get into high school.
So for parents and children watching, what can they expect to learn if they enroll this summer? What actually happens?
So at the KB Power Mentoring Camp this summer, they will be learning how to change a bike tire, because young men ride bikes, but they'll also be able to change a flat tire on a car as well. So they'll always learn something related to working on a car. These young men will also learn healthy cooking. The statistics of our children being obese and overweight is something that's really alarming. So they'll learn how to make a good, colorful, healthy meal, because a lot of times kids don't think colorful meals can be healthy. And then they'll also learn team building and swim safety. Those are just a few things they'll learn.
Awesome, awesome. When you see that, what do you feel? What goes through your mind? And tell us more about the power of the KB Foundation Camp.
When I see that video, I think of 2016, when I was 2 weeks out from the very first camp that I was going to do. And I called my mother, right, who I always talk about. And I was with my wife at the time, who was my girlfriend, and I was going to cancel the camp because your cousins like to sign their children up late. So I'm 2 weeks out, right? I got this venue. I got people ready to come teach, but I have no parents sign their kids up. And that's 2 weeks out. Then we get about 7 days out, and I got like 1 or 2. That video reminds me that you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And in 2016, I had 9 kids. That interview with NBC 10 was the summer of 2020, when we were in the middle of a pandemic. And I was the only one who was doing something to help kids.
Sure.
Because we were in a pandemic. And a real long story made short, all I did was copy the NBA, because in 2020, the NBA found a way to have a season by creating a bubble. And I said, well, if we can do that for the NBA players to make money and entertainment to still go on, I can create a safe camp space. If we all get there healthy, for the whole time that we're there, we're in our own little bubble. And in 2020, we did the camp with 13 young men. In 2021, we did it with 25 young men. And this year in 2022 was the seventh annual, this year, 2022. And we held it with 45 campers and 5 junior counselors. So that video reminds me where I started, and I was going to cancel it. But anybody listening to this, don't cancel something because it doesn't meet your expectation. You have to start somewhere.
Love it.
And I started with 9 campers.
Last question. What are 3, if you can, 3 must-haves a young person needs for future success?
First time I've been asked that question. 3 things. I can do it. 3 things. A young person needs consistent love. Not just love, they need consistent love. And I just say consistent love because it's not always guaranteed to be from a parent. There are many people who have thrived because it was a teacher, it was a pastor, it was a nurse at the church or a Bible study teacher. For young people to be, they just need consistent love. That's the first one. The second one is they need to be taught and educated in ways that support their strength. They cannot be educated or taught in the ways that fit a box or the status of the majority. If your kid is a visual or auditory learner and somebody's making them take notes in order to memorize tests, they're going to fail. That was my struggle academically. The second thing our kids need is they need to be taught to their strengths. Individualized education plans are real. IEPs, the things that they talk about, we need those for every child so that we can learn how they learn best. So consistent love, and then making sure our kids learn in a way that benefits them and not what benefits the education system.
Sure.
And then the third thing I would say is kids need a safe place to fail. And they need to know that failure is okay. And then we learn from failing. And after we learn from failing, we don't quit. We either say that's not for me, or we take what we've learned and incorporate it somewhere else. But failing is okay. Our kids shouldn't all be shooting to be 4.0s. Our kids shouldn't all be shooting to go to the NBA. Why is the only mark for our kids the top of whatever we're talking about?
I love it. I
It
love
needs
it.
a place to fail.
Love it. Kirk, we conclude our show the same way every time. And it's because I'm a motivational speaker, inspirational speaker. We asked our guests to give a mini MINI keynote. So I'm going to ask you in 15 seconds, mic check, look into that camera even closer and summarize what you shared, or if there's another message for us to remember in our head and our heart. You got 15 seconds, keynote. You're talking to the youth, you're talking to adults, you're talking to everyone. Mic check. Next voice you hear will be that of the youth superhero, the youth whisperer, Kirk Berry.
Kirk Berry, your youth empowerment educator. We say oftentimes children are the future. But where is our future if we aren't all spending time with our children? I want to challenge you. I want to encourage you. Spend more time mentoring, being a parent, being a teacher, being a youth organizer. Spend time building up our future because it'll make it a brighter future.
Mic drop. Thank you. Kirk Berry, what a pleasure. What a journey. I mean, you're changing lives, you're saving lives, and you're helping adults to do the same thing. Well, thank you for being on the show. I hope people blow up your phone, blow up your email, get you in to come speak to their group, because they will not be disappointed. And
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And for you who watch every time, transformational, informational experience, you learn a lot on the Dr. James Show, head and heart stuff. We'll see you next time. Please bring a friend or two. And like I always say, you've just been gym-packed.